All right. Good morning, singers. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning to talk to you about a somewhat incredibly difficult and often anxiety-ridden subject, the tenor high voice. Three elements of the tenor high range. And they are the vowel timbre, the yawn position or tilt, and the narrow larynx. So as you see from this slide, the elements that I would list for the development of good tenor high voice are composed of two physical elements and one sound quality. The two physical elements are the tilt or yawn position and the narrow larynx, which tunes the higher harmonics. These are essential. I've already had webinars regarding these principles, and I would invite you to study those carefully. You can find those on mastersofopera.com if you haven't seen them before. The physical elements of tilt and laryngeal narrowing are absolutely crucial elements in order to develop the correct high voice. However, the third element, the sound quality, is what I really want to focus most of my time on today with you, the vowel timbre. So let me tell you right from the beginning, the number one key to developing the tenor voice is learning a new timbre. The key to learning the tenor high voice is first, above all else, learning to hear your voice timbre differently in the high voice. All these YouTube sites that talk about big voice and manly voices and testosterone bringing chest voice up are part of a cultural issue and problem. From an artistic point of view, from a purely technical point of view in tenor technique, this cultural trend that started with Caruso and Pertile and took strong hold 30 years later with Del Monaco and Corelli, the pinnacle of verismo singing, whereby a tenor should be a bundle of testosterone, impetuous and fiery, is a very limiting and sometimes even dangerous vocal trend. And I think it signaled a sharp decline in the emergence of heroic and bel canto tenor singing. If I say to speak at a higher pitch, people almost always start to speak more in the mask. Instead of speaking more in the mask, just change pitch. Watch. So, for example, I speak like down here. What if I speak like this at this higher pitch? So I went from down here to up here. Go ahead and try that. Thinking yawn and narrow and cry, you get a sound. Whoa, whoa, whoa. What if I speak? What if I speak on this kind of sound? See how that changed my voice? This is important. Most tenors I work with this concept on start laughing when we do this. They instinctively feel nervous, even though they might not even know that they do feel nervous. They start laughing at themselves because they feel uncomfortable making that kind of sound in their speaking. It violates a little bit their vocal identity. So Corelli, on his lessons with Lauri Volpi, he says, he wanted to lighten and brighten my voice. Quote, sing as you did as a young boy, he told me. Quote, imitate a baby crying, close quote. He advised me to hold back my voice a little before high notes. He would say, quote, Corelli, remember, the aria is 3 or 4 minutes long. In 95% of the cases, the high note is at the end. The more you push in the middle voice, the more difficulty you'll have on the high note. When you do the high note well, the public applauds. When you don't, it doesn't. Close quote. I didn't like what he had me do with the beginning of O Suave Fanciulla from La Boheme, because it was too light for my voice. He tried to make me sing certain phrases more smoothly and with less youthful ardor and impetuosity. He made me sing more clearly, less round and dark, with pure vowels. These are all really, really interesting concepts. You know, imitate a baby crying. Sing as a young boy. Hold back slightly your voice before the high notes. Sing smoothly, with less youthful ardor and impetuosity. Sing more clearly, less round and dark, with pure vowels. Just very, very interesting concepts. I want you to listen to two recordings now. I'm going to broadcast two recordings of LiVIgni to try to elucidate and try to put in the forefront a little bit these concepts that he was trying to transmit to Corelli. I want you to hear them in LiVIgni's own voice. The first recording is one from 1934, and it's LiVIgni singing A te o cara from I Puritani. The philosophy of this mezza voce singing is that you're able to sing for longer periods of time and not have to like always give 100% and wreck your voice. È un canto sul respiro. It's a singing that's based on a kind of sigh. The resonance is crucial, but the intention is delicate. You can sing with a low larynx and with compression without it changing your timbre towards aggressiveness. Okay. High tenors can be from the lightest voice to heroic tenors, depending on the size of the voice and the incisive nature of the squillo. The ability to vary the level of adduction depending on dynamic. Now, this is an advanced thing. It's important to realize that piano singing is not as adducted as forte singing. For this reason, the old system of singing sees an increase in adduction with the higher voice and a greater support of the downward diaphragm against the lower abs, or a greater energy behind the thorax. The intention is never in and out, in and out. It's rather up and down, up and down. That's the intention. And the intention is important. The transverse abs also, down here, these transverse abs, when you sing, they kick outward as well. These abs below the belly button, the hypogastrum, contracts upward. It's not in toward the spine, but rather up. This is also why I absolutely detest the image of going to the bathroom when singing. Some singers have described the movement of the diaphragm that way, but a bowel movement. I think it's an incredibly destructive image. It does not correspond to what these singers did in their singing. Yes, the diaphragm compresses downward as we see it. It doesn't really, but that's how we feel it. It's a downward compression. But if you go towards a bowel movement, that action of bowel movement, you will squeeze the false chords and get into a grunt. Up top, I have I drew a little circle. This just represents the closure of the epiglottis. So normally, when you're singing, you have a certain pressure of air above the chords, air pressure, and a certain pressure underneath the chords that's necessary in order for the phonation to be initiated. It's called a pressure threshold for phonation. So there's a threshold that has to be met in order for the chords to start their vibratory process, right? So let's say, for example, you have a pressure of 10 initiating the phonation underneath the chords, and then a pressure of 3 up top the chords. Well, when the epiglottis and the aryepiglottic fold come together and reduce the diameter of the exit of the larynx, the pressure above the chords changes. There's a swirling movement of air within the laryngeal tube above the chords, like little vortexes of air. And that because the diameter of the exit from the larynx is reduced. So the air that's coming through the chords is now spinning a little bit more inside the tube, causing the pressure to increase. So instead of having 3, let's say, we suddenly have 7 in pressure. What happens? When the pressure above the chords increases, the air pressure increases above the chords, the threshold for phonation decreases, meaning that the increasing the pressure above the chords causes the pressure threshold for phonation to decrease, allowing you to phonate with less pressure. In essence, by narrowing the larynx, you're actually creating a constriction of the space above the chords, not in the false chords, not a squeeze in the chords, but a constriction above the chords, which causes the air to spin and increase its pressure directly above the chords within the laryngeal tube. That causes the pressure needed for phonation to decrease. The actual pressure needed to make a sound actually decreases. So that means that you can sing with less pressure and still get the same exact power, but with less pressure. So squillo, narrowing, finding the beam of sound, like the old timers would say, directing the voice like a laser, which are all effects of this laryngeal narrowing, causes the pressure threshold for phonation to decrease. It causes you to sing with less pressure, basically. Train yourself to hear your voice that way. Listen to tenors that exemplify that kind of gentleness in singing. Listen to Björling. Listen to Caruso when he's singing gentle in his middle. Listen to Lauri Volpi, to Gigli, to Schipa. This sense of gentleness is very, very evident. But even other singers like Vingassen, others, there are many that use Max Lorenz often, Cortis, so many. They sang with this kind of gentleness. Kraus sang with this kind of gentleness in the middle. Many others in our day, Camarena, Calea, they all aim for this sense of gentleness in their voice, in that middle range. That is an important aspect if you're trying to learn the pathway to establishing the gentle high voice without thrust, without push. And then you build your bones. Once you've established that gentle way of phonating, you build your bones. You figure out where your voice can go in the repertoire, how big it can get, and so forth and so on. But first, build the voice. Build it on a balance, on an equilibrium. And then you'll see after. Right? So always measured, always di posizione, on position, never thrust. Yeah, with the sound. Never push, never grunt, never lift weights. That's all wrong. you need to think gentleness sul fiato, with great engagement of the body, but with the voice thinking in the extreme gentleness.